Hi guys, so my name is Nicole. I am the Director of Transactions here on the De Silva team, and I'm going to be explaining contract to close, okay? So it's the whole transaction process. So the first part of a transaction is when we get an offer accepted. What do you do after you get an offer accepted? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to fill out what's called a CSU form or a transaction form. So you're going to scan your documents, the offer, and you're going to put it into your CSU document slot. And you're going to go and you're going to click on transaction form and you're going to fill that out. If you do not do this, your TC will not start attorney review. Okay, so it's really important that you fill out that transaction form. If you have any questions, feel free to email or chat your TC and we can help you out. Attorney review, what is it? It's a 3-day period where both the buyer's attorney and the seller's attorney will review and revise the contract. In the state of New Jersey, you need to have this. It's actually a legal process, and if you don't, you can get in big trouble. Who goes into the attorney review email? Attorneys, both the buyer and the seller's attorney, agents, both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, and you might want to CC either paralegals or transaction coordinators such as ourselves. Your TC will be sending out this email. So an agent doesn't have to be worrying about this. Only a TC will be worrying about this. In the attorney review email, the documents that will be included will be the fully executed contract, the lead-based paint disclosure, a seller's disclosure, seller's property disclosure form, and whatever documents that might, need to be included or added depending on what kind of sale that you have, right? And we'll attach those documents there. If by any chance we don't have a fully executed contract and we're missing, let's say, a buyer's agent signature or just like little hiccups here and there, that's completely fine. We'll just ask them to sign it and circle back through that email. So it's a good thing that we have this, 3-day period. Nicole, can it take longer than 3 days? Yes, it can, because a lot of times we have transactions where we have tenant situations or we have people who need to do a use in occupancy. They know that they're going to do a use in occupancy afterwards, after we close. So all these little things we talk about in attorney review. What fixtures are staying, what fixtures are leaving, right? Included, excluded. All of these things we will talk about in attorney review. It'll just help make the under contract portion of it much easier, much smoother, so that we can get to the finish line without having to have all this back and forth later on in the game. So attorney review is necessary. All parties should be involved. You should probably exclude your clients from it, your buyer or your seller, because they will get worried, right? Seeing what goes on behind the scenes. So we just want to really keep the A-list players on this email, and we'll talk back and forth throughout the whole transaction, pretty much through this email chain. Okay guys, now we're going to talk about what happens after attorney review and we are officially under contract. First and foremost, I want to say that anytime there's a transition, so attorney review to under contract or whatever the case might be, you do want to notify your VAs and me, your director of transactions, because we will be uploading and changing either CSU or the master sheet, and it's important that you're letting us know. And any big ticket items that will happen, you need to go ahead and you need to put it into your CSU, just so that if you're either a transaction coordinator, you're telling your agent, or if it's an agent, you're telling your TC about exactly what's happening. But we'll talk about that a little bit more throughout the process. So what happens when we officially get under contract? The first thing you'll do is you're going to send out an email to your clients, congratulating them, hey, we're under contract. And here are a few points that we might want to look at. And you'll get that message template from myself when you start off. But then you want to focus on a certificate of occupancy. And what that is, it's an inspection. You'll receive a sheet or a certificate where it states that the house is habitable or livable and in safe condition for you to live in. In order for you to receive that, you'll have to have inspections done on your property by the city or city inspectors. And this process might take a little longer depending on what city your property is in. But that's why we want to make sure that this is done as soon as we get under contract. And once the city gives us a date, we need to make sure that we're putting it into CSU. Once you order it, you need to make sure that you're putting it into CSU because we want to have the data to track when it was ordered, how long it took, what city it is. That's important information for us. So you want to go ahead and you want to fill out that certificate of occupancy. The second part of this would be to look at the deposit. Normally the deposit is given within 7 to 10 days after attorney review is over and the under contract process has started. So how do we know if a buyer is serious or not, right? This is the first step, is to hand in that deposit. Once you have that deposit, you're going to want to receive what's called an escrow letter from the attorney who is holding that deposit in their trust account or their escrow account. Once we have that, we'll send out an email to our client with the escrow letter or maybe even the check, the picture of the check attached to the email. And we'll say, hey, just so you know, we got this. Buyer seems like they're pretty serious. And at least we have that to backtrack and have that in our records that the deposit was actually sent in. Second, home inspection. So we're going to want to use that same attorney review email that we have, and we're going to ask them, hey, when would your buyer like to hold the home inspection? Or if you are representing the buyer, you need to make sure that you're calling the home inspector and coordinating with the agent to figure out what date and time your buyer would like to hold the home inspection. And you might want to relay that information over to whoever is representing the seller because you need to make sure that you're granted access for this inspection. If we don't do that, we encounter a lot of problems and we kind of lose the other party's trust, right? So we need to make sure that we're all on the same page. Home inspection is one of the parts in a transaction where we can actually lose the deal or the deal might terminate because a buyer might walk in and find out that the house really isn't for them. But there are certain things that we can do to make sure that this is actually a fair response, or is the buyer just having buyer's remorse, right? So we're going to negotiate back and forth, and we need to set the expectations right from the beginning of showing the house to make sure that the buyer knows these might be normal things that you'll encounter in maybe 5 other homes that you would do a home inspection on, or actually that the house is falling apart and you might want to look at a different house, right? So that's home inspection. Once you receive a home inspection date, you will let everybody know through the AR email, and then you want to put it into CSU. Once again, CSU is your best friend. We need everybody to be updating their CSU. If you are a TC who has scheduled the home inspection, tell and notify your agent. If you are an agent, tell and notify your TC. You always want to make sure that you are on the same page, okay? Once the home inspection has been done and you'll negotiate through the attorneys, through the agents, through the TCs, you want to make sure that we conclude this contingency and that whichever party has concluded the contingency, that we have records of it being concluded on that email, okay? Next is the appraisal. Here is another time where the deal might die because the house can underappraise, and sometimes buyers do not have the money to come out of pocket to fulfill the purchase price. And sometimes sellers don't want to lower the purchase price. So that's where we have a little bit of an issue on the appraisal. The appraisal will be contacting you. If you notice for any reason that you haven't received a call, if you're on the buyer side and you haven't received a call, you might want to reach out to the lender and just ask, hey lender, who is the point of contact for this appraisal inspection? And they might say, oh, it was so-and-so. And you might say, I don't even know that number. I don't even know this person. So you want to change that to either the agent or the TC. I recommend it always being the TC because agents are always on the go and they might not, take a look at their phone or check their voicemail or whatever the case might be. Your TC is here from 9 to 5 p.m. I can guarantee you there's no appraiser that's working after 5 p.m. Appraisal, once you receive that date, you want to go and make sure that you put it into CSU. Notify all parties in that same email. Make sure that you'll have access to the house. If you are a seller, make sure that if you're representing the seller, make sure that your seller is contacting those tenants and getting you in there and that everybody will have access, right? Once the appraisal is done and all parties have come to terms, right? Best case scenario that the house appraised or overappraised, then that will be fairly easy to conclude. If not, you'll definitely have to go through some negotiations or the deal might terminate. Now we're going to go back to the certificate of occupancy. Once the appraisal has been done, we're getting closer to the closing point, right? And if we don't have our certificate of occupancy, this might be a big red flag. And certificate of occupancies do hold up closings because, again, we do need that in order to close. Along with the certificate of occupancy, depending on what city you're in, you might need a fire inspection as well. So those two will come hand in hand. The certificate of occupancy, once received, you'll scan it and you'll send it to all parties in the same email thread that we once had when we started the attorney review. Make sure that you are putting it into your CSU documents because we always want to have that to refer to. Title. Make sure that people have ordered title. By people, normally it is the buyer's attorney. Buyer's attorney needs to order the title and we need to clear the title. A lot of times either sellers or buyers will have judgments, either child support or a lien, a special assessment, whatever the case might be. They'll have that on their title and, as a cloud, and we'll need to clear up that title. And that does take some time depending on what the case is. It could not take any time. You could just get a simple mortgage discharge from the previous mortgage company or the current mortgage company, and that'll be cleared up in 1 or 2 days. So that's best case scenario. Once title is cleared, you can go ahead and let your client know, whether it's the buyer or the seller, because that's great. And we're one step closer to the clear to close. Clear to close would be on the loan side of the process. What is a clear to close, first of all? Clear to close is when the lender has received all the documents needed from the buyer in order to close and has sent it over to the underwriter, which is the bank, and the bank clears those documents and says, hey, your buyer is good to go. We have everything that we need. You can go ahead and let them know that we have a clear to close. Once we have a clear to close, the loan officer will let us know, or the lender, and we can go ahead and schedule the closing with the title company. So we have a certificate of occupancy in hand. We have a clear title in hand. We have a clear to close from the lender. We have home inspection and the appraisal contingency concluded. We have our deposit in, and now we are 7 days to close. What do we need in these 7 days to close? We need to make sure that we get a commission statement. You're going to go ahead and you're going to add that in there, the purchase price, and your TC will show you how it's done, and really your TC will be doing it and filling it out, and they will be sending it to all parties. Okay, and we really want to make sure that title gets this commission statement because they're going to reflect it on their CD or the Alta. And that is one big document that has all the financials on there. If we don't send in our commission statement, we don't get paid. And we essentially just did the whole deal for free. Or sometimes, we can see that, hey, like something's not adding up. The CD isn't balanced, right? We might need the realtors to take a look at their commission or whatever the case might be. When you fill out a commission statement so that we don't encounter these problems, what you're going to do is you're going to put it into CSU and you're going to tag at Savannah Kessler and you're going to ask her to please approve the commission statement. Once she approves it and she gives you the thumbs up, then you can go ahead, feel free to email it to all parties, and make sure that you are also sending them the CO, the whole certificate, or the fire inspection. And then you'll receive what's called the CD or the ALTA, the final one. And that they will say that it's the final CD disclosure or the final ALTA disclosure. And they will send you a copy of the fully executed where all parties have signed off, and they'll let you know that you have officially closed. When you have officially closed, make sure that you let your Director of Transactions know, and also the VAs, so that they can update the CSU dates and that they can update the master sheet. This is super important. We want to make sure that on the MLS it reflects that we have officially closed, not only for ourselves, but for the other parties that are involved. And we don't want any problems with GSMLS or NJMLS, and we just want everybody to be on the same page. And then last but not least, congratulate your clients on closing. Oh, one big thing that we have to talk about is the final walkthrough. It's done 24 hours before the closing, okay? And final walkthrough will be coordinated between either the agents or the TC, where you will go back to the house and you will see the house and make sure that it's in its proper condition. Whatever was reflected on the attorney review, that if you have included in one of the fixtures, make sure the fixtures are there. If appliances were included in the sale, make sure that the appliances are there. So that's where if you go back to the house and you see that there's a big hole in the house, you might want to get a credit for that hole that's in some kind of wall. Normally it's done 24 hours before closing, sometimes 48, and sometimes on the day of closing, depending on what the buyer schedule looks like and the seller schedule. And that is it.